Well, hey, everybody, Pastor Steve. We've come to the end of another week. I hope you are looking forward to worshiping Jesus Sunday, and you are also inviting people to come to worship with you. Remember, at First Baptist, we have 3 worship services, our 2 contemporary worship services at 8:30 and 11 o'clock, and then our traditional worship service in the middle at 9:45. There are life groups for you no matter which hour you attend worship, so we encourage you to join us Sunday morning for life groups and also for our worship services. I'm preaching this Sunday the second of a 4-week series on real discipleship and talking about being spiritually strong and spiritually safe, that when you're a real disciple, you grow and become strong. So that's what we're going to talk about this Sunday. Today in our Bible reading plan, if you're following with us, and I hope you are, we're in the book of Acts chapter 25, and if you don't have a copy of our reading plan, go to our church website, www.fbcrockhill.org, and it's on the homepage. You can print it out, read with us, and we're doing 5 chapters a week. So today we're wrapping up this week's readings in Acts chapter 25. Paul, as you remember from yesterday in chapter 24, was in Caesarea, and he's been there 2 years. Felix, the governor, is retiring and being succeeded by Festus after 2 years of imprisonment in Caesarea. And when Festus first becomes the governor of Judea, he's not in the Roman capital of Caesarea. He's actually visiting the Jewish capital of Jerusalem. And while he's there, the Jewish religious leaders speak to him about the Apostle Paul. Chapter 25, verses 1 and following. Festus then, having arrived in the province, 3 days later went up to Jerusalem. So travels from Caesarea to Jerusalem, 3 days after he's the new governor. Verse 2. And the chief priest and the leading men of the Jews brought charges against Paul. And they were urging Festus, requesting a concession against Paul. They thought, hey, this new governor, maybe he'll do us a favor. That Festus might have Paul brought to Jerusalem. And he goes on to say there, so that they could ambush him on the way. That's what they really wanted. Festus, in verse 4, answered them that Paul was being kept in custody at Caesarea and that he himself was about to leave shortly. And he invited them to come down to Caesarea, present their case against Paul, and the trial will be held there. He did not give in to their request. So another trial takes place in Caesarea. But what struck me as I was reading chapter 25, especially having already read the previous chapters, is how badly these Jewish religious leaders wanted Paul dead. I mean, we now have read about 2 plots to kill him. They've prosecuted him before Roman leaders more than once. He was beaten to a bloody pulp in the temple and would have been killed if not rescued by the Roman soldiers. They really wanted Paul dead. Why? Well, several reasons, but I think there's one preeminent reason. Let's think about the different reasons they could have wanted Paul dead. One was just as part of the persecution of Christians, and yet that wasn't the main motivation, because there were thousands of Christians of Jewish background living in Jerusalem, and they were not killing all of them. There was something special about Paul. So it wasn't just the normal persecution of the Christians that caused them to want Paul dead. Another motivating factor, and remember yesterday we talked about how things are not all black and white. People have many things that sometimes motivate them to make certain decisions. That's true in the way they hated Paul and wanted him dead. They probably resented his work among the Gentiles because there was some racial prejudice between the Jews and the Gentiles. And they didn't like the fact that Paul was out preaching to Gentiles. I mean, that offended them. That was a factor. Don't think it was the biggest factor, but it was a factor. Another factor was that Paul preached salvation was through faith, and that you didn't have to obey the Jewish law to be a Christian. Now, Paul would say it's okay if you're a Jew who gets saved to observe Jewish traditions, but it doesn't save you. And he said the Gentiles don't have to do any of it, and that would offend some of them, and that made a lot of them really angry. That was a big factor. It wasn't the main factor, but it was a big factor. I think jealousy was part of it, especially among the Jewish leaders outside Jerusalem, because when that mob attacked Paul in Jerusalem, we're told very specifically that it was the Asian Jews, the Hellenistic Jews, the Jews who lived outside Jerusalem and Palestine that had come to Jerusalem for the festival. They were the ones who attacked Paul and then got the rest of the Jewish people stirred up, because when you read the book of Acts, it's very clear that in those Gentile cities in what we think of today as Turkey, places like Ephesus, and then over in Greece, places like Corinth and Athens, that a lot of the people who became followers of Jesus in those cities, those Gentile areas, were Gentiles, but also Jews in the synagogue. And so you had some Jews leaving the synagogues, becoming Christians. And then you had some Gentiles who were God-fearers, worshiping the God of Israel in the synagogues. They would leave the synagogues and worship Jesus, become disciples, and become part of the church. And Acts tells us more than once that the leaders of the synagogues in those Gentile cities were jealous because Paul was attracting more people to Jesus than they were attracting to the Jewish synagogues. And I think the jealousy was a big factor for these Asian Jews who were attacking Paul. Now, for the religious leaders in Jerusalem, I think another factor was a feeling of betrayal. Remember, early in Acts, Paul was the Jew leading the persecution against Christians. He was the one that got authority from the Jewish council to arrest Christians in Damascus and throw them in jail. Once Paul became a Christian, there was still persecution from the Jews to the Christians, but not as strong as it was when Paul was leading it. And in some sense, I think they saw Paul as this guy who was once one of them, but he had turned his back on them. He had betrayed them. And now he was leading the very movement that they resented and had been persecuting. It's similar in some countries when a Muslim converts to Christianity, becomes a follower of Jesus, and their Muslim relatives or Muslim neighbors turn on them viciously sometimes and fire them from their jobs, persecute them, even kill them on some occasions. How dare you turn your back on us and become one of them? For you and me, we don't face that, and it's not exactly the same. In fact, it's not even close to the same, but the principle's similar. Someone gets saved as a high school student or a college student or as an adult, and all of a sudden, their former friends turn on them. You think you're better than us now, don't you? They may not come right out and say it, but they will tempt you to go back to your old way of living, not understand why you don't want to do with them the things that you used to do with them. You think you're a goody two-shoes, don't you? I guess what I'm saying is, just like yesterday, people are complex, motivated by many different things. Opposition to God's people, opposition to the gospel can come from a lot of different places, not just from one source. People can be motivated by many different things, not just one thing. And you and I would be so much better off if we just quit trying to figure out what the real motivation is, realizing that it's complicated and there may be many motivations, and what we need to do is what Paul did. Just keep doing what's right. Just keep loving and serving Jesus. Continue being a witness for Jesus and never give up, no matter what other people do, because we're never going to totally understand what they do. They are complex and complicated. But what you and I need to do is simple. Stay true to Jesus. Stay true to Jesus. I hope you'll do that this weekend and be in church. Hey, God bless you, and I'll see you not only Sunday morning, but next Monday with these devotions as we continue in Acts 26.